Good afternoon, guys. Steve again here for our second instalment of the webinars. We've had pretty good feedback, I would say, from the first session. A lot of people saying they would come back, so hopefully you guys are here again. Today we're just going to be looking at an introduction to the purchase invoicing module. We get a lot of feedback from our customers when they come, certainly new customers, when they come online with Prima, the purchase invoicing bit, because you don't have at the time very much purchase invoice data in there. It's something that gets picked up later in the implementation process. So what we would normally do is we would run a session in a few days, a few weeks. Sometimes it's done during the implementation, but essentially the people might be picking it up after the event of the initial install. So what we wanted to do is we've got a few new customers with us at the moment, and hopefully a few of them are here today, and I just want to give you some kind of background information around the purchase invoicing module and an introduction into some of the steps, but more focusing on the kind of concept of it and how and why things are happening in the area. So, okay, I'll just switch you over to my screen, and then we can get going. Okay. So the way the purchasing invoicing module works in Prima, it really comes down to the purchase orders that you've got in the system. You can do manual ones, which we may have time to look at, may not. But generally, it's down to the purchase order side of things. So essentially, as you're doing your fulfillment for your customer orders or your stock, you're raising purchase orders with your wholesalers or suppliers, whoever it may be. So you'll have a list of, I've got spices set in there, have a list of however many purchase orders you are. Okay. As soon as you mark a purchase order, so I've got an outstanding one here. As soon as you mark a purchase order as purchased, and be that through an EDI PO, a back-to-back sales order, if you use back-to-back process, whatever it may be, if you use those, however you process that purchase order, when it gets to a status of purchased, at that point, Prima's then waiting for a purchase invoice line. Okay. So, and the purchase invoice line will be relating to whatever the product line is on that purchase order, and the price, etc., that it's expecting to pay will be related to that purchase order. Okay. So from that point, Prima's then waiting for you as an invoice process to accept that line or lines and process the invoice through, and then it pass obviously onto Sage or whatever financial system you guys would use. Okay. So it really kind of comes down to two bits in Prima as far as the invoicing goes. Hopefully some of the guys that are listening today will understand this. That you've got the electronic side, so your suppliers such as Antalis, Vow, West Coast, Beta, Spices, the big boys, if you like. They generally will offer now an EDI facility. So you're sending your orders down to the wholesaler directly. They're acknowledging a purchase order in return. And what happens is, I'll start with the electronic orders in this way. In the invoicing area, when you get your acknowledgement, at the point that the wholesaler dispatches the goods on their system, what happens is they release a file, and Prima will collect that file and drop it into your Prima system. Okay, so depending on when that happens is all down to a setting in the EDI link, so you can determine how often Prima collects those purchase invoices and credits. Some people have it switched always on, some people have it switched a couple of times a day, and some people do it on a weekly basis, so they would have a day a week where they collect everything and then match it through. Most people it's daily though, I would say, because the majority of the stuff will come in, match, and go straight across to Sage. There's no real reason not to have it switched on. Okay, so in the invoicing area, what happens is then you essentially get two types of invoice. So the first one I was talking about here was the electronic. So from the point of Prima, the process in the background works the same, but how you deal with them is slightly different. Okay, so you have electronic invoices from Prima. So when you create a purchase order, you send the purchase order across. You have this available lines area. So what happens is Prima, as soon as a purchase order is marked as purchased, in the available lines there is a list of stuff relating to purchase orders. Okay, when your wholesaler dispatches the goods, the file comes in, Prima checks in the available lines, does that invoice line match to the invoice that you've received from the supplier? And what will happen is it will create automatically an electronic invoice. Okay, so at that point, when it creates the electronic invoice, what happens is there's a matching process that takes place. And if all the criteria has been met in terms of the matching process, the invoice itself will mark itself as complete, then update to the status posted as it does, and transfer across to Sage. If that's not happened, then the invoice will still be created. And let's have a look if we've got some in here. Electronic, and just see what we've got in terms of electronic. So if it's not happened for whatever reason, you will have invoices left in here that are outstanding. So for the most part, they will go through, and you don't have to, as a user who's managing the purchase invoice side, you don't have to do anything with those. You essentially get left with a list of exceptions, and the exceptions are the ones that you essentially need to know what to do with when they've not matched. So there's a list of reasons why something wouldn't match in Prima. Okay, and I've got the list written, so I'm going to just display it on my screen shortly. I'll do it now actually, and we can start looking at that. So these electronic invoices here haven't matched. Okay, what would be my reasons that they haven't matched? And if I just switch my screen now. Okay, so what I've got up on the screen here is essentially a list of the reasons, and I'm just going to run through these just to make sure like I've kind of reiterated the point and people follow. If you don't follow what that means, one of the guys here is on the chat, so you can ask them a question. So the first one, no purchase order in the system. Okay, so an EDI invoice has to match to a purchase order that exists in Prima. If one of your purchasing team has phoned through an order and not put the order onto Prima, you will still be, if it's an EDI supplier, you will still be invoiced electronically. So the invoice will drop in and the system won't know what purchase order to reconcile that invoice with, because it won't exist. So in that instance, some of our customers have gone through the process of creating a manual PO. Some of our customers would, and then matching it manually. Some of our customers would just make sure that it's okay in terms of the values and that they might have an email confirmation of the order, and pass it through. But either way, there'll be nothing in the system as such to link that. So this comes back to, certainly from any new customers that are with us today, please get in the habit of wherever you've got a purchase order to raise it through Prima, because then the matching up process, it might seem like you're saving time in the initial point when you're doing the purchase, but when the people who are actually trying to reconcile the invoices have got to pick the bones out of what's happened, it will be much easier if they've got a purchase order to match to. Okay, second point, product code does not match the codes on the invoice or not present on the order. Okay, so this can happen quite frequently. You will have a purchase order that's gone through and you'll receive an invoice where it might be an updated product code and they've got it updated on their system, but your system is still perhaps running the old code. This is fine for you to pass through. It's just a case for you to check that code is actually what you wanted and that's what you're going to be paying for. Okay. Quantities and pack don't match. Again, pretty common. You'll invoice or you'll raise a purchase order for 4. You get the initial invoice comes in for 3. So Prima's expecting to see an invoice line. Prima's expecting to see an invoice line for 4, but actually the invoice comes into 3. So what you need to do is, via the match process, go into the match and just say, right, okay, this is the one we are looking at, and if you match it, then the remaining one will drop back into your available lines to be invoiced at a later date. Price outside the tolerance. So there's a default tolerance. I believe it's 10 pence set in the admin area, and you can define what that tolerance is. So if you receive an invoice line and it's larger than that, then you can check that off against the PO. If it's okay, accept it and pass it through. Invoice line already matched to another PO. We see this quite regularly. Someone perhaps who doesn't normally do the invoicing gets to pick up the invoicing on an occasion, and they'll go into the available lines and build an invoice for an EDI order. That shouldn't be happening. If any orders that have gone down the link, any EDI orders, don't go into the available lines and pull those out to generate your invoices manually. Prima, the EDI process for invoicing, Prima does that for you. So you shouldn't be going in for any Spices, Vow, Antalis orders and picking out the lines. So that invoice line already matched. If people are doing that, that would be the reason why. Okay, EDI invoice only matching to an EDI purchase order. Okay, I'm just going to switch back to my screen now just to demonstrate something for you guys to check. Okay, so if I go into a purchase order, and I just go into my lines, I've got no links on that one. Let's find. I'll go into a PO actually and show you through a PO. Okay, so in a purchase order, what will happen is you'll have an EDI status in the PO. So in the EDI status, if that says unavailable and this invoice hasn't matched but everything else appears okay, if you come into the PO and that says unavailable, that means that someone's put the order on but they didn't send it down the EDI link, and an EDI invoice will only match to an order that's been sent via EDI. So essentially this order, if it's set to unavailable, it was emailed through via the report, it was telephoned through. The order's still in Prima, you could still match it via the match button, but it's not essentially going to match automatically because it has to be EDI to EDI to make it work. Okay. Just come back to my list. So your supplier reference does not match. That's a pretty straightforward one, and you would see that. You would see that straight away. And the bottom one, purchase order stuck at status awaiting acknowledgement. This would really be the case. It doesn't happen so often, but we've put it on here just for as a thing for you to check on the purchase order. You think, I'm still not seeing this order come through. Essentially what happens is sometimes if you send an order via EDI, the connection between the Prima system and your wholesaler system can get interrupted for whatever reason, and you may not get a message back. What happens is, in that instance, the status of the PO is such that it's not yet been kind of fully processed through to purchased. So what you need to do is, in the purchase order, you'll have a button at the top of the PO. I'll just skip back to my screen. Up here, it says progress to receipt. And as soon as you click that button, it will be available in the lines to invoice. Okay. So just coming back to that list again, just finally, there are quite a few things there that stop it from matching. And what we're going to do is we're going to communicate this list to not only everyone who's here today, but to the customers who couldn't make it as well, and just make sure that everyone has got this as a reference point. Some of you might have it already. It's just a really handy thing, certainly when you're picking up the system. Okay, I've got a checklist of why is this not coming through. In reality, we're talking about exceptions in Prima, so for the most part, you'll be dealing with, we say it's normally between 5 and 10% of the invoices. That have, I would say, the need to be checked and reconciled via the match process. So I'm going to just run through in the purchase invoice area. If I just go into the available lines. So I'm just going to create an invoice quickly here. So I'll just create this file one. Okay. I'm just going to jump through into the lines area. Okay. So in the lines area, this is a reference for all the users who've not seen it before. The status column here on the left hand side, if this is blank, this will mean that it's pulling information through from a purchase order in Prima, and that's matching to that PO. Okay. If you see 3 X's in here, then that means that it's not matching. Okay. So I don't know if you guys saw earlier when I was in that. I haven't got it still open. That invoice from. No. Let's go back into the electronic one. So I go into my lines here. I've got 3 X's here. So this this invoice is not matching. So this would be your indicator, and that is the thing, that's the indicator that stops it from passing through automatically into the supplier invoicing area in your Sage. So what we want to do is use the match button, and if it's available, the match button will show here, and you will see in the match button, when you click on the match button, the purchase order potentially that you're looking for, the quantity that Prima believes it should be, the codes and the pricing that Prima believes it should be. When you click on match and you select the line within the pop-up, you're just saying this line matches to this purchase order and calling that complete essentially. So you'd put that information into the PO, mark it as matched, and then that line will be done, and the line, those X's would disappear. So it's just a reconcile process. Okay. So the electronic ones, in summary of the electronic ones, that it is just going through essentially your checklist. You'll find some of the suppliers are better than others in terms of putting the actual information in there for you, and getting the prices right and the codes and the quantities. But some of them you may have a little bit more work involved, and I'm sure you'll see who they are as you as you start using them. We are taking more and more on in terms of EDI. I think in the last update DMC came on board. If anyone uses those for EDI, you can contact the support team, they can help get that set up. Okay. I just want to look briefly on the kind of the manual side. So I just created an invoice here, and just running back into your available lines. So for any where you get the paper invoice through and they're not an EDI supplier, in your purchase invoicing and available lines, you've got a few options at the top in terms of how you find that. You can go by PO number, description, the stuff that you've stocked already, so it's already been booked in by using the receipt only line, and then you would just search. So I'm just going to search and just bring back everything, so I can find the invoice that I'm looking for, or invoices depending on how you want to create it. Highlight the line, choose the all lines option, and create the invoice. You then have an outstanding invoice, and you just need to fill in some information in there. So really the manual invoices are very straightforward in Prima. So I've got my invoice number in here. I need to assign a date in the invoice. So I can use today's date. I can backdate it to whatever the invoice date is on your supplier invoice. So 16th, for example. Over to the right hand side, you've got essentially a checking stage. So Prima believes from the PO the lines net will be that total. Okay. If the invoice total on your supplier paper copy or email copy that you've got is 179.06, that's essentially what you're putting in there. Okay, to say that it matches. Okay. If it doesn't match, what the process would be in that instance is to go into the lines and just see if the quantities would be right, if the pricing is right per line on the invoice, and just make an adjustment. Because it's a manual invoice, you can change it as necessary in the unit price here. When you've done so and everything tallies up, come back and just make sure again that checking stage that it matches. Okay. You've got a VAT breakdown in here. So Prima now calculates the VAT and puts what it believes should be the total in here, and you can save that and close, and then Prima will populate the VAT total. So that should be the gross value that you see on your invoice. Okay. With manual invoices, it's the case that again, you might see lines come in from different purchase orders onto this particular invoice. In that instance, you can use the additional items button to find stuff again that you're waiting on from different orders for that particular supplier, and you can highlight and add those things to the relevant invoice here that we're talking about. Okay, so the manual invoice process is a case really of manually typing in the information as you've got it in front of you and just making sure it marries up. Okay. And when you're happy with that information, you can mark that invoice as complete, and that will complete, then post, and then transfer to Sage in the same way. If it's a query or something that you might want to look at, and this goes for electronic or manual, you've got the journals option here, and you can put a note on against it. So I'm going to pick up, query the price, and then I can give it a date. And if you use, this really comes into play if you use the dashboard. So on Monday, I've not got time to do it today. On Monday, I'll query the price with the supplier, and if I use my dashboard, that task will pop up on my dashboard screen if I have the journal set to display. And then what happens is this individual invoice, there's a note against the individual invoice, and then also as a full audit trail, you've got a note against the Spices account as well if you go into the journals area there, so you can see where you've been tracking that information. Okay. If you need to produce a copy of the invoice, most people, because it's passing through to Sage, leave everything stored in Prima, but some of our customers would print out a copy and match it to the paper invoice. You certainly can do that. Just come into the purchase invoicing section. You can print a copy or save a PDF if you needed to, and that goes for electronic or manual. Okay. So the two slightly different processes achieving the same thing. You're doing the work for the manual ones. Just coming back to the main invoicing screen, you're doing the work for the manual ones, but for the electronic ones, you're essentially finding out what's gone wrong with the ones that haven't completed, and that's it. So you'll just have a list of outstanding, and you can work through those as per the checklist that we went through earlier. You'll find, and we find this happens very quickly with our customers, once you understand that checklist, very quickly you'll be ticking off the invoices, and the matching process will be a swift part of your invoicing day. I just want to, sorry, there's something I just missed, and I just want to come back to it just to make sure that everyone who's perhaps new to Prima, or even if you're not, please use the links within a record. So we're talking about invoices today. It could be purchase orders, it could be sales orders. Please get used to using the links. The links will tell you everything that's happening regarding this particular line on this particular invoice or order or whatever it may be. So when we're talking about matching items, once I've matched that item, the links will be a link back to the dispatch note here that we've dispatched the goods out on, the original purchase order that was placed, and then you can forward through to those things. So when I was talking before about everything looks okay on the electronic invoice, but I can't see why it's not matched, if I come use the links and get back into my PO and then find it's unavailable, then that would be a reason that it's not matched, and I can just go, yeah, that's okay, accept it and complete. So the links is a really, really important tool in Prima, and I'd urge anyone who doesn't use it yet to really make it become the way you navigate through the records in the system, because it will tell you step by step how far you've got against any certain record. So yeah, I just missed that off by mistake at the end, so sorry about that. But I just wanted to come back to it there because I feel it's really important that you do use that and make good use of it, because it will help you, rather than going out of a module, closing the thing that you're in down, going back to the side, choosing the new module, starting again. Just use the links and it'll flick you through very quickly onto the next thing. Okay. I just wanted to finally kind of come on to, there is a case in point for some of our customers where they just put a manual invoice on. There is no PO in Prima. We don't necessarily recommend it, but the facility is there if you want to do it. And the quickest way for that to take place is via the new record facility. Come into the new record, create a new purchase invoice, put your supplier on. So this generally wouldn't be for someone like Spices or Vow, but I know they're set up as Supplier, so I'm going to cheat and use one of them. So my Vow 2 account, test invoice, and create. Okay, so I can create a manual invoice very quickly, and then you're kind of back to the process that you would do for the manual invoice. So you still need to give it an invoice number. You still need to assign a date. But the difference being with a manual one, because you're not bringing anything from a purchase order, you need to put the line on. And in that instance, you can go to lines, and at the bottom you get a big button there telling you to create new record. Okay, you can put a supplier code in. Most people don't at this point. Some of our customers would use it. They're paying a delivery charge or something that might have been missed off the invoice. They don't want to put a PO on for it, so you can put a delivery charge. Or your supplier forgot to invoice you the VAT, so you're putting an extra invoice on for that. So delivery charge, so quantity. Put your quantity in. What is your cost price? Too many zeros. £4.45 is my cost price. What I would say at this point is make sure you assign your nominals and your departments here. So your nominal would be wherever in Sage you want that to pass to. So I've got a delivery nominal, and then my department in all cases in Prima is office. So I'd save that, and then I've got a line. In the same way, if my VAT is standard, then I'm just checking that it's 445. Save that. My VAT breakdown. It's calculated the VAT, so just save and close. And then if I'm happy with everything, I can just complete. So it might be, it's rare, but it might be the case that you don't need a PO. And in that instance, you can just raise an invoice like that. So it's pretty straightforward. If you're already in a record, for example, and you realise that you need to just add the VAT onto a different one, you can use the new record within a form as well. So you've got the purchase invoice there. So when you're happy, just mark it as complete, and then it's done. Okay. We've talked about the records here. Obviously, you've got the grid filters and things in here, and we're just doing an intro today. So for those people who use the grids in Prima, you will probably have the stuff set out how you want. But for the new users with us today, you certainly can manipulate the grid. Some people want to see the pricing and the supplier on the left-hand side. Some people want to see the dates over here and sort it by date. So you can manipulate the grid to suit, and then you can click on the columns, sort the columns, and then when you're ready how you want it, you can save the settings. Next time you come back into the invoicing area, it will be saved in that way. Okay. It was just a right click, by the way. Okay, so on the filters side, as you can see, if you click on the green bar, you've got lots of filters available here to find the information: PO numbers, supplier invoice numbers, product codes, what nominals the stuff's going to, dates on the invoices. So you really will be able to find that information, and the type's important as well. So if you're looking for outstanding invoices that are electronic, what you can do is you can have a setting electronic status outstanding, and I don't know how many users have this set up at the moment, but the little profile of the person on the right hand side here just allows you to create some defaults for the grid. So if you're always going to be looking for outstanding electronic ones, which you probably are, you can right click on the little profile of the person. Oh, I just need to make this smaller because it's gone onto my second screen. I'll just try it again. Create a new default, and I can call that my electronic invoices to process, and I'm going to set that as my default. What will happen is now every time I come back into here, when I search, by default I'll be looking at my electronic stuff, because that's generally what will be in the list of the outstanding, because you'll normally complete the manual ones as you go. Okay, so there's just some little hints around the grids. I've gone through it in an introduction way, I would say, this afternoon. I don't really want to go into too much more detail for the benefit of some of the customers who are with us today that may not have seen the invoicing module before, and I just wanted to make sure that you've got a kind of background as more to why things are happening, rather than the button clicking as well. I think having the grounding behind is really important. Once you know why the things are happening, then we find it makes a lot more sense for our users. So we'll communicate out the notes as we saw on the page here, and make sure everyone's got that either via one of our MailChimp emails, or we can email directly. And it will certainly be placed on the Prima Help site for people to access. And we'll be, as we were last week, we'll be hanging around to see if anyone's got any questions on specifics, or just general questions around the invoicing module. We have a topic which we'll be communicating to our customers probably by the end of the day of what we're going to be doing next week, and then what we'll be doing is putting a poll on our Twitter account, and the Twitter account will be determining the following week's content for the webinar session. So we want our customers really to kind of drive what the need is, the training need. So I don't know if any of you have signed up to our Twitter account yet, but we have a Twitter account which is at Prima Help, and Ollie's just going to put it onto the chat now, so you guys have got a link to it, and please sign up to that, because we're committed to daily tweets which are tips about the product, weekly tips regarding the webinars that are coming up, and tweets about the release notes and things, so what's coming up in Prima. So it's a really handy kind of news feed, if you like, of what's coming in Prima. And we're going to be theming the tweets around a particular module each week. So sales, invoicing, customer records, CRM, and tweets for that particular week each day will be relating to that particular thing. So we're really excited about that from a customer point of view, and we hope to get some good feedback on that. So like I say, if you guys have got any questions today, just stick around and we'll be online for as long as anyone's still here. Okay, so thanks guys, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.